What's up, guys? MLS Aces Podcast, episode 236. This is your host, Tom Sweezy. Sorry about missing the last few weeks of podcast episodes, especially with the awesome MLS Cup playoffs going on. COVID got me. COVID turned into strep throat. Strep throat turned into feeling pretty shitty. Still technically positive, still technically all that stuff, but I'm staying safe. I'm staying away from people. I'm taking my medicine. I'm making sure I'm coming back strong. So I want to thank you to people who have said positive words to me over the last few weeks. I'm glad to be back doing the podcast for you guys and chatting, like I said, these awesome MLS Cup playoffs. I want to start things off though with some really good news, some exciting news as far as MLS Aces and the MLS Aces podcast goes. I've announced it a few times on social media, but I am officially back, so that means I can say it now on the podcast. I'm excited. We're excited over here at MLS Aces to be a part of Podcast Row at the 2023 United Soccer Coaches Convention in Philadelphia from January 11th to January 15th. If you guys don't know, this convention is the ultimate event for soccer coaches, administrators, and fans of the beautiful game. You guys can ignite your passion through captivating presentations, on-field demonstrations, exhibits, and networking events for any type of coach or any fan or any administrator of around the game of soccer here in the United States. So whether you're going to be attending this event alone, whether you're bringing a whole coaching staff with you, there really is no better place for soccer coaches to learn, network, podcasters to learn and network, or players to learn networks, really, to be honest there, and experience the latest trends in soccer education here in the United States. So please visit www.unitedsoccercoachesconvention.org to register. You can come join us and join me over with MLS Aces and celebrate the passion for the beautiful game. If you guys don't know, it's a really awesome soccer event that's held every single year. Next year in 2023, it's going to be held in Philly. If you guys don't know, like Total Soccer Show, Soccer Cooligans, Sirius XM, like all of these big time soccer podcasts and radio shows that are held in U.S. talking about U.S. soccer week in and week out. They've been there before. They've attended it. I'm excited and I'm thankful to be asked to be a part of Podcast Row and to be there in Philadelphia. So definitely stay tuned for any updates that are going to come along the way about the United Soccer Coaches Convention. Again, go to www.unitedsoccercoachesconvention.org. That is not the only piece of exciting news. The exciting news is this episode, I am talking with Cheyenne Foster over at Btwn Clean Sheets. If you guys don't know, she has a brand new podcast out. She's all over social media creating content on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. So go search Btwn Clean Sheets, BWTN Clean Sheets, and you'll find Cheyenne and all the content she's making. She's been on this podcast before, and I was excited to catch up with her. You know, her and I really did a deep dive into the conference semifinals, previewing the conference finals. So all of those games, all the action we talked about there. The last piece of exciting news. Sorry, and that's going to come up after this. I didn't say that part, but me and Cheyenne, our conversation will be coming up after this last piece of news that I have to go through here for MLS Aces, and that is just the MLS Aces Awards. I wanted to get the awards out, the season end, year end awards. I wanted to get them out last week. Unfortunately, with COVID and strep and everything that's kind of turned into, I had to announce them on social media. So if you guys saw on Twitter and Instagram, then you saw. Congratulations to all the players. But just for anyone who strictly only really listens to the podcast, I will be announcing the MLS Aces Award winners for 2022. I definitely want to say Philadelphia Union and Duke players and coaches and everyone definitely took clear advantage of these awards after a successful and amazing season that they had. But the 2022 Comeback Player of the Year, 2022 MLS Aces Comeback Player of the Year, striker Julian Carranza for the Philadelphia Union after a rough 2021 with Inter Miami, coming back in 2022, scoring a ton of goals. His goals plus assists are insane. So really congratulations to him and well-deserved there. Our 2022 MLS Aces Coach of the Year, and announced today, 2022 MLS Coach of the Year, Jim Curtin of the Philadelphia Union. This award no longer exists with Major League Soccer. The Rookie of the Year, the player coming out of the NCAA who performed the best. So our 2022 MLS Aces Rookie of the Year is FC Cincinnati goalkeeper Roman Celentano. Obviously locking down a starting goalkeeping spot, making the playoffs, showing out in the playoffs. Like Roman definitely well-deserved for this award. The 2022 Uncle Sam Goalkeeper of the Year award, again, back to the Philadelphia Union, Andre Blake, well-deserved. I mean, absolutely a stud. He led the league in clean sheets. And I mean, when you're an MVP candidate as a goalkeeper, then I mean that means you had a pretty good year. The 2022 MLS Aces Daryl Grove Defensive Player of the Year, Defender of the Year, whatever you want to call it. If you guys don't know, the late great Daryl Grove, former host of the Total Soccer Show, he was a defender in his men's league action, and we honor this award after Daryl Grove. This award goes to Philadelphia Union's Kai Wagner, left back for the Philadelphia Union. He missed one game the entire year for the Philadelphia Union on a historically great back line, and obviously was also tied second in the league, not just defenders, not just left backs, not just whatever, tied for second in the league in assists. So when you're doing it defensively, when you're doing it offensively, I think that bolsters you into a pretty good spot. So Kai Wagner won the 2022 MLS Aces Daryl Grove Defensive Player of the Year award. The second to last award here, we have the MLS Aces MVP. Hani Mukhtar, Nashville SC, not too much of a surprise there. The dude absolutely balled out and willed his team into the MLS Cup playoffs. Well deserved for Hani, and especially after the last two seasons. I know it's only for 2022, but last year Hani balled out. Now he continued into 2021. He balled out. 2022 he continued that. I mean, an absolute boss of a player that Nashville should maybe give some help to for MLS Cup playoff run. And lastly, before I get to my conversation with Cheyenne Foster, really previewing the MLS Cup playoffs and really getting into the content of what you guys want to hear and what you guys want to watch, is the 2022 MLS Aces Team of the Season. Some of the players on here, we do it this way, where if you've won an award, like you won Goalkeeper of the Year, you are the goalkeeper of the Team of the Season. It just makes sense to me. I don't know why other places don't do that, but whatever. So the 2022 MLS Aces Team of the Season is including the 2022 MLS Aces Goalkeeper of the Year, Andre Blake in net, 2022 MLS Aces Defensive Player of the Year, Kai Wagner at left back, Alexander Kyans of NYCFC at one center back, Jakob Glesnes of the Philadelphia Union at the other center back, Alistair Johnston right back for CF Montreal is finishing out the back line for the Team of the Season we have over here. Ilie Sanchez from LAFC is our defensive midfielder, with two central midfielders in front of him of Daniel Gazdag of the Philadelphia Union and our 2022 MLS Aces MVP, Hani Mukhtar of Nashville SC. And the front line is Carlos Vela, LAFC winger, on one side. The other winger is going to be Sebastian Druisi of Austin FC. And the striker up top in the middle, Jesus Ferrara, USMNT striker for FC Dallas. Congratulations to all of those players who won an award. I'm not sending you an award, but congratulations on being named those award winners. Like I said, guys, I chat with Cheyenne Foster of Btwn Clean Sheets. Make sure you go follow Cheyenne on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, everywhere else that she has her content out there, her reels, her videos, her podcasts, whatever it may be. She does a great job in covering Major League Soccer and really diving into the things that make MLS so unique and so special to all of us. So go make sure you follow her and sit back and enjoy this episode with me talking MLS Cup playoffs with her and previewing the MLS Conference Finals. Thank you guys, and see you next week. We are back with another episode of the MLS Aces Podcast. This is your host, Tom Sweezy, and this week I am joined by a special guest, her second appearance on the podcast, Cheyenne from Btwn Clean Sheets. Cheyenne, how are you doing today?
I'm alive.
It's always a good answer. Always a good answer.
Yeah, no, I'm doing all right. I feel like this playoff structure, it's fun to watch as a fan of a team who didn't make it, wasn't even close to the line. But I missed the double elimination. I felt like it was a way to ease yourself into it. And since everybody knows I do the fan POV kind of vlogging experience.
Yeah.
I do feel for people who want to watch their teams but won't be able to watch them at home. They would have to travel, and it's kind of a frustrating for some of these teams to travel and not see their team score a single goal. So at least Dallas didn't have to travel too far to see
Right.
that.
I know.
It's been awesome. Other teams, I know it's been tough. So
It's weird, right? It's like there's aspects to the double leg playoff that I love that I miss, but then there's aspects to it like I get it, right? Like a one seed of LAFC maybe shouldn't have to travel to Austin or to wherever they're going. So I understand that the league's also growing, so how many playoff games are you also going to tack into? It's such a difficult balance, I feel like, of where MLS wants to go and making it just as fun on the field too. So I don't know.
yeah, I
Random
feel
point.
that. We're in a transition. That's I have to say, no matter what I do, who I talk to, it's at the end of the conversation with Major League Soccer, it's always so much is happening, and
Yeah.
to your point, it's growing. So I'm just grateful for that growth, even if it doesn't look like how I'm used to it looking. So
No, 100%. I'm grateful for the excitement too. There's been a ton of excitement at these playoffs, and that's pretty much what we're here to do. Is we're here to cover what has happened. It's been a few episodes with me being out sick, so there's been a lot that has happened and a lot to talk about for sure. But first, Cheyenne, I have to ask you about the Premier League Fan Fest in Philly. You did an awesome job from someone who was sick and watching on social
thank
media. It
you.
got me through COVID. Was watching your updates and obviously what social media was put out by Premier League in USA and everything like that. So I don't want to take away from content that may be coming out from you on your YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. Make sure you follow Between Clean.
Every platform.
But I want to hear a little bit more from you of how it was hosting things, how it was just interacting with fans, and the overall experience.
Of course. So the opportunity presented itself in kind of a weird way with some folks that I met while I was at MLS All-Star, content that I'm still working on even 2 months later. But I have made it clear to them and have made it clear to friends close to me that I don't pay a ton of attention to Premier League
Mhm.
as much as I used to when I was younger or in high school and college, because the more I've gotten into MLS, the less time I have to sit and watch all of that soccer. But there are people who do that. And the amazing thing about FanFest in Philadelphia was that there were so many Philadelphia Union jerseys
Yeah.
that I saw while I was there, which was awesome. Absolutely loved it. But people lined up the night before. I stayed with a bunch of other folks from NBC at a hotel nearby. We could hear them cheering when I got up at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning.
Love it.
And yeah, it was an absolute marathon. It was really, really awesome to see people that excited that early in the morning. And I did a couple of things around Philly to give folks an idea of the city and the stage that FanFest was being held on. And at one point, the story I will share that I have posted about a little bit is that I went to the famous Gino's cheesesteak place,
Yes.
having never had a cheesesteak, like an official Philly cheesesteak before, by the way. And you can tell that they're very accustomed to hosting the likes of Guy Fieri and all these other places that actually film, because when we walked in, they had a table in the back with a bunch of photos and a space that was very clearly meant for filming.
Yeah.
And I turned the corner. The whole thing, by the way, was very fly by the seat of your pants, just trying to capitalize on opportunities that were organic and that we weren't
Yeah.
expecting. But I turned the corner and Alan Shearer, freaking English Premier League and English national
Love it.
team legend, was just sitting there also waiting for his cheesesteak. And I was like, "Oh, hi, I'm Cheyenne."
Yeah.
And he's like, "I'm Alan." I was like, "Yeah,
I
okay."
know who you are.
I know. So, and that happened to me with a handful of other um, great Premier League legends that had made their appearance for the weekend. But he and I both agreed that a cheesesteak is something you can enjoy maybe once in a lifetime.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm not a big fan of a Philly cheesesteak either. I very rarely go to Philly, and I have one every once in a while, and that's pretty much it.
yeah. And Philadelphia is having their moment with the
Yeah.
Phillies, the Eagles, the Union, et cetera, et cetera. So I was definitely there on a quite a lively weekend and was really grateful for the opportunity to do it. And as someone who, like I said before, does the fan POV and
Yeah.
enjoys it, no matter who is playing. I think that it was a great opportunity for me to just revel in the moment of a very weird fan culture, and weird not in a bad way at all, a very unique fan culture, which is people supporting teams that aren't even their local teams.
Yeah.
Whether that means they have family that live in a part of England and that's why they like that team, or they just randomly picked a team, or like me when I was younger, I had a crush on David Beckham, liked Manchester
There you
United
go.
because of it.
There you go.
So it's just fun to watch people get really excited about that. And so early in the morning, but then wrap up at like 2 o'clock and still have the rest of the day. So
I have one follow-up question to that. How many, I guess, drinks were drunken? I don't know the right word at
oh
3
my
o'clock in
gosh.
the morning.
The drinks were drank. People held their alcohol quite well. I was
Good.
surprised. Um, Again, Philadelphia, I do think they do save the most rowdy behavior for the evening, but I wanna say there were probably 3 or 4 people of the thousands and thousands that by the end of the day, I felt like their buddy needed to come get them, which is incredible, by the way. It's a
Good.
very small percentage, so I would pat everyone on the back for having handled themselves, well enough, so
Love it. Well, I don't want to take away, again, too much of the content that's going to be coming out from Between Clean Sheets on all
yeah.
social media platforms. Just make sure you go and follow Cheyenne with her new Tottenham fandom and everything that goes along with that. So, Cheyenne, let's dive into the MLS Cup playoffs, and we'll start in Philly since we're talking about Philly. Obviously, Cincinnati, after their first round upset of the Red Bulls, travel across not too far to Philadelphia, where they take on that number one seed, and they fall a little short. It's a 1-0 loss for Cincinnati. Philly comes up with, I guess after a little bit of time off, they come up with a big time win against a very hot Cincinnati team. Leon Flachs, his second career goal with the Union, which was
Right.
the difference maker. I guess when you were watching that match or looking back at that match, what are your takeaways on Philly squeaking out a 1-0 win?
Now, I think they could have performed better if they didn't suffer from the one downfall, or one, in my opinion, con of being the first seed, which is getting a longer
Yeah,
break.
yeah,
I feel like Cincinnati played that game really well and have a lot to be proud of, but Philly, A, with the home field advantage, B, with just how absolutely dominant they've been all season, it was only a matter of time before they added yet another individual to the latest rap sheet of goal scorers. And that is, believe it or not, the one game that I sat down and watched completely uninterrupted, no phone, no nothing, laid on the couch and watched from start to finish. I had every intention of going. Unfortunately, again, just
yeah.
that fan fest took so much out of me. So I was like, Philly can't do it to me again. But I think that they knew what they were up against, and
Yeah.
I think for as great as a game as Cincinnati played, they held their own. So that was definitely a positive note that I know a lot of New England Revolution fans think about from last season, knowing that gap of play and the home field advantage didn't work out for them as well, but it really worked out for Philly. So I give them credit.
For sure. And I mean, I was nervous for Philly because Cincinnati was playing so well. No Alejandro Bedoya in this match for the Union. I think
Right.
hopefully he should be back for the NYCFC matchup. And then Andre Blake was just Andre Blake in that too. He had 5 big saves, and the dude is an MVP candidate for a reason as a goalkeeper because
Right.
just a stud. And at the end of the day, performances from him, that historically great back line, Philly came out with the win at home and took care of business. No matter if it wasn't the prettiest, it was still a win. Let's move out west. Let's go to LA. Let's go to El Trafico. Everyone's favorite rivalry, not mine, but I'm just a pessimist about it. This one was good. This one was a classic El Trafico moment, maybe the biggest one. I feel like every single time there is an El Trafico matchup, everyone says it's the next biggest matchup. But this is playoffs. This is for all the marbles, right? Win, you move
Mhm.
on. Lose, you go home. LAFC as a 1 seed. they cut it very close, as the Philadelphia Union did as a 1 seed as well, but they took care of business at home with a 3-2 win, a late game winner in this one from Chicho Arango. I guess, how are your thoughts of El Tráfico, the playoff version?
I find it so interesting that in these games, the guys that LAFC spent the most money on did not show. And it's been quite interesting seeing the different ways in which both teams have spent and what their priorities have been. You guys know LA Galaxy's defense has been some of the most underperforming players for how expensive they are.
Yeah.
And that's something that they've really struggled with. I think they've finally found their rhythm. And I really thought that they were going to make this one happen, especially with not that Gareth Bale has been a huge playmaker, but just the overall, not morale, but maybe vibe of the team when you're operating with the kind of guys that are clearly getting the most TV time, most buzz, getting the most jerseys purchased with their name on it. The guys that are the ones on the front of the freaking marketing material that don't even show up for the game. I think that the rivalry is, I'm still a pessimist, but I would argue it's absolutely the best one because they played in the Open Cup, they played their regular schedule or regular season game, and then they played this one, and there have been plenty of opportunities for us to see the battle back and forth. And I think that they're a pretty evenly matched team, and I would have said that even before this scoreline. So, Ricky Pooch.
Yeah.
Is that how we pronounce his name is what I really want to know.
That's what I'm going to go with, because everyone always goes Ricky, and then there's a nice pause between them saying the first and last name because no one's confident.
Right.
But we'll go with it.
Right. I think he's someone I'm really looking forward to seeing in 2023. It was definitely an abrupt end of the season, postseason for LA Galaxy. But again, if we had had 2 games, how crazy would that have been?
Maybe.
So the fact that we got 5 goals, a late stoppage time winner, I have no notes for that game beside the fact that I do think LAFC, and we'll talk about it in a second, I'm sure, I don't necessarily have them favored for the game against Austin, if I'm being honest.
I think that's very fair. Look, I was on in like me kind of feeling better. I didn't want to do a full podcast, so I went on the MLS Gone Wild podcast and guest appeared over there. I picked the Galaxy to upset LAFC in this one. I thought the Galaxy were primed to do it. Not that Nashville was the biggest test in the first round of the playoffs, but Nashville have who's most likely going to be the MVP of the year in Hani Mukhtar. Galaxy pretty much negated that. And I felt that, the starting 11 was consistent and they were performing, and Ricky Pooch and everything like that, right? I think Ricky might have been a little deflated in his first El Tráfico appearance, but you learn. He's a young kid. So I think that 2023 is going to be an exciting year for the Galaxy, especially when they build around a few of these guys. But this matchup had everything you wanted. LAFC at the end of the day take advantage, and they're moving on, and we'll talk about their matchup against Austin FC in a little bit. But let's dive into Austin since they're on the brain, right? Austin FC Dallas, Cope Tejas. It was another rivalry match out in the Western Conference. Austin, they took the win 2-1. I think it was an absolute dominant first half performance from Austin. I think shifted the mentality for Dallas in the second half. They went very offensive. They were throwing in wingers at fullback. They were throwing everything against the wall. And at the end of the day, I think Austin just played consistent, coherent soccer. They stuck to their style. And yes, Dallas pulled one back in the second half, but Austin was just dominant. And I think they looked very good.
They were consistent and measured. And I did notice toward the end of the match that, first of all, I kind of had forgotten that Jesus Ferreira was there. He just seemed so muted. And that's exactly what Austin would have wanted. There's no statement from that game on who he is as a player. He's been so phenomenal to watch all season. But I just think that they did a really good job of shutting him down. And at the end of the match, I noticed that Dallas was just getting more and more desperate, in the sense that it almost seemed like there was a disconnect between the defense and the offense. The defense was just moving a little bit slower because they were tired, but the offense was like trying to score that goal to tie, and it really made me miss Paul Arriola. And it was one of those things where I was like, wow, for as great of a player as he is, and for as much as I enjoy watching him on the national team, I know that's a bit controversial.
Oh,
But
he belongs there. That's
yeah,
my opinion, at least.
right? But the tenacity that he showed when they were down was something I never, ever saw at DC United,
Yeah.
and you could tell that it was just a manifestation of the offense's mentality at that point. They obviously, I think, had they been given maybe 10 more minutes, they probably could have eked something out. I do think Austin, like, held on at the end there a bit, but it was just really heartening to watch them not give up. I know that sounds silly, but
No,
everybody has to know and remember that I come from a team that gives up
give up.
at halftime, gives up before they start the match. So to watch these matches that are so intense, and then the atmosphere of the crowd, Austin, I do think, really benefited from hosting that match. It's just a completely different vibe. So it's almost like El Trafico. If you had added like 10, 15 minutes onto the end of either one of those games, I think it would have been even more bunkers than it already was, in my opinion. I just think Austin had the benefit, like you said, of coming out early. So
I mean, I think that's a very good point you just made. Like, I think this rivalry moving on into the future, like, this is going to be a matchup, like, it's going to turn into like must-see TV, especially if Dallas continue to pipeline into the first team, like an Alan Velasco, who was fantastic in this one, and I think arguably their player of the postseason. I think Austin's doing the right things. Dallas is now putting more money outside of the academy, like I said, into the first
right.
team. And I don't know. I think there's a lot of positives for the future. I liked the no quit attitude that Dallas did have. And I think under Nico Estevez, we've seen that all year long. And I think it's only going to be something that is going to grow underneath him. And then obviously we've seen the no quit attitude from Austin, right? They're the comeback kings of MLS at this point. And now the 2 seed moving on to face the 1 seed, but we'll talk about that in just 1 second because we have to talk about the final game that happened this past weekend. NYCFC, my boys, I will take credit for all of this win. Went up to Montreal, and they took the battle to Club de Foot, and they won 3-1. It was an absolute dominant performance, if I do say so myself. The early goal from Maxi, Santi Rodriguez was creative, and then the late PK for Talis Magno to get on the scoreboard in his postseason debut this year. George Mihailovic pulled one back late, but New York City, I think, just really took it to Montreal in a battle of beautiful styles of soccer. And I won't gloat too much about this win because we still have to preview them against Philly. But Cheyenne, what did you take away from NYCFC Montreal?
I felt like everything that Montreal was attempting just didn't connect. There was a great cohesiveness among New York's defense, and every time Montreal attempted to do what I have noticed has become quite beautiful soccer over the past season, it just fell short, a little short. There were beautiful crosses that made it about 75% of the way and that were knocked out. There were different attempts at passes through that didn't quite make it. Things that I saw, the attempt was there and I knew what they were trying to do. But it was one of those things where you're like, had it been a touch earlier, or had you seen the opportunity a half second sooner, this would be a different game. And so it was a good reminder that as good as Montreal has performed this year, it may be more so that the Eastern Conference has faltered a little bit than it is that Montreal has been an absolutely dominant team. I do want to give them some huge credit. And I know, of course, as we sat down to chat about the playoffs here, Tom Bogart, our favorite MLS news giver, gossiper, mentioned that Montreal's coach was being considered to replace Caleb Porter at Columbus, which I would never agree to do. personally. But I feel like it's tough with a league, and this I'm gonna be existential here for a moment because, I've been giving these broad generalized statements here,
Go
but
for it.
it's really hard, in a league with, emphasized parity like Major League Soccer for you to get your hopes up about how a team performs year in, year out
Mhm.
because, as I'm sure everybody knows, so many of the teams that made the playoffs, last year didn't make the playoffs this year. I mean, freaking Colorado finished first in the West and
Yeah.
didn't make the playoffs this year, and I mean, think of the Timbers, how they've kind of bounced up and down the table since they first appeared in the Cup in 2015. It's just weird, a weird phenomenon that I enjoy because it gives every team an opportunity to dominate from
Mhm.
year to year, but at the same time, you're like, "What does this all really mean? What's the longevity here?"
Yeah.
And that's why when teams, like, squeeze through the playoffs, I'm glad that they're there. Like Orlando, Miami, all these other teams that played once, New York Red Bulls once and then went away. You wonder, just how much they have to do and how many more hoops they have to jump through
For
to
that next step.
yeah, to get to the top or to stay at the very bottom.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's like I can think of it now and appreciate it for what it is, but I know next year I'm gonna have absolutely no freaking clue.
No, it does make you sit back and appreciate, like, the teams that I think are as consistent as you're gonna find in Major League Soccer, right? Like, a Seattle Sounders, I know obviously they didn't make the playoffs, but you won CCL, like, go
Right,
for it. Like,
right.
you're kings of CONCACAF. Like, the
Mhm.
Sounders and LAFC, right? 2 supporter shields in 5 years. I'll give the Red Bulls credit, 13 straight years of making the playoffs. That's not an easy feat to do in Major League Soccer. Yes, they have
No.
done the thing, but like it's still an accomplishment. So the teams that are consistently good year after year, I will give them credit in saying like it's tough to do, and especially like your point in Major League Soccer, you don't see it quite often.
No. And yeah, you're right about the Red Bulls. I think that's really all you can ask for
Mhm.
sometimes as a fan. It's when I mean, there are a ton of things that different teams can complain about. It's you spend a ton of money, like LA Galaxy level money, and then you don't make the playoffs. I've consistently or constantly rather tell people about Zlatan coming to the league and making this big grand statement among many others that
Mhm.
we were going to crush in the postseason and Chris Wondolowski, my favorite from San Jose, just very politely saying like, really glad to have Zlatan in the league and look forward to having him and LA Galaxy finish just below the playoff line. And that's
Yeah.
exactly what they did on decision day, losing to Houston. It's just like it's for a fan of a team like that, sometimes I get jealous. I'm like, they're spending so much money, they're doing so much,
Yeah.
and yet they don't make the playoffs. Or teams like DC United, where last season we played such beautiful soccer and really enjoyed. I really enjoyed watching the team despite the loss, and then out of nowhere, we just kind of fall off the face of the earth at
Yeah.
the very end of the season, lose to New York City. At that time, a 6-0 loss was like super embarrassing, but we went on to do that twice this
You
year.
guys made it like, in style. You guys made it.
Yeah, but it's like we have Wayne Rooney, so you go out, you make that, like, big,
Yeah.
spend to get a coach that is recognizable and has credibility in a certain sense, and then you not only don't make the playoffs, but you, get the wooden spoon. So it's like there's something to complain about, and there's something to be grateful about for every, fan of every team year in, year out. So it's one of those things where I go back and forth on it in my mind a lot, a lot.
No,
So,
look, it makes it very interesting to I think you have to have like a front office, a manager, and like you need to have them line up to be consistent, right? Because you may have a front office that's going to put all their money into the academy where the manager wants, first team players in their prime, but the front office is like, no, you're taking 19-year-olds and you're going to force them into a starting spot. I think the
right.
teams that are successful have really good communication from the coaching staff to the front office, and they have an idea that what they want to do, and they stick to it. It's not this shifting around type of deal that I think we see a lot of the times, where a manager maybe has one poor season, let's say Paulo Nagamura with the Houston Dynamo, and you're let go because you have a brand new GM in there and they need to see success right away, and you don't give time for managers maybe to implement a style, implement a system, a culture, whatever it may be. I'm
Mhm.
very big into the mental side of the game. If you haven't been aware of that yet, like I want to
Right.
see like locker rooms gel and mesh, and I think that is just as big as the performances on the field, because when you get that positive mentality, I think the performances come with it. So it's I like the existential mind kind of training we just went through for that around Major League Soccer. That was fun. That was fun.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
But to your point about the mentality, I mean, I know we're gonna move on at some point to Philly and New York. The fact that Jim Curtin, 2 very consistent teams, by the way, and I know
yes,
everyone was worried about Castellanos, like, leaving during the summer and what that meant for New York, but
I
the
panicked a
fact
little
that the
bit.
2 of them are back in the same spot they were last year, and the fact that, Jim Curtin is not only a good coach, but also, like, a good person
Mhm.
and someone that people, um, like players on the Philadelphia Union really just gravitate towards. I mean, think about the game that they had just played. Well, yeah, the games that they've played pretty much any point this year, but especially the preseason. When goals are scored, like everyone runs back to the bench to go
And they
hug
celebrate
Jim.
with you. I love it. I love it. I got to see it live. It's so awesome when like players appreciate a manager like that.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I don't know what that's like personally, but
Yeah. Well, hopefully the players are loving Wayne Rooney in 2023. But in 2022, let's preview the
yes.
Eastern Conference Final. We, like you mentioned, we have a rematch of last year's Eastern Conference Final. Number one seeded Philadelphia Union. They'll be hosting the number three seeded NYCFC on October 30th at 8 p.m. on Fox Sports One. This is an intriguing matchup because of the repeat of it being the Eastern Conference Final of last year. NYCFC, the reigning champs, Philadelphia Union, the number one seed in the Eastern Conference, a historically great team when you're looking at statistics and you're looking at performances on the field. On the field this year, Philly has taken both wins. Granted, one was very early on in the season, one was mid-season. New York City only really finding this positive form at the end of the season. So it's been a very interesting mix of, I feel like, storylines that you can go into this. But I guess, Cheyenne, my question for you, and we'll start more general, and then we'll kind of knock it down a little bit. What is your thought about this matchup, just overall, kind of heading into this weekend?
I'm very much looking forward to it being the matchup that we deserved last year.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I know everyone, if people don't remember, Philadelphia Union suffered that COVID bout, and a lot of their starters were unfortunately unable to play. It made way for an NYCFC favored win, but they still showed a very dominant performance. And the one dude I know that we have from last year that played a huge role in that will play a huge role in this upcoming match is Morales,
Mhm.
Maxi Morales. So I think there's a command on the field and a tempo that New York has that is well matched with Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And again, generally speaking, I am very much looking forward to the back and forth. I do think, though, whether we rank one or over the other, they are both very important to their teams. Sean Johnson for New York and Andre Blake for Philadelphia.
Yeah.
I do think it's going to come down to just how well the keepers can block some of the shots that'll come through. Because I know both of these defenses are going to be broken down a bit. A
Yeah.
lot of a lot of what's happening are going to be the transitions
Yeah.
from possession from one team to another, but also whether or not those guys are going to be able to hold off during the 90 minutes of regular play. But if it does end up going to PKs, um, they'll definitely play a role there. So
I think the goalkeeping is definitely like I mean, oddly, it's the first thing my brain went to too, right? Because Andre Blake has been so big for the Philadelphia Union all regular season and in the game against Cincinnati. And then Sean John in their, this kind of last stretch for them.
Yeah.
And definitely last postseason, this postseason, he's come up with big saves as well. I think he had 7 saves in the win against Montreal. So I think it might come down to which goalkeeper can't make that miraculous save to
Right.
kind of overcompensate for the defensive lapse on both sides, because you're going to have the Philadelphia Union pressing style against New York City's playing it out of the back and stringing together passes. And it really does make for a very, I think, what's going to be a uniquely just awesome game. I'm glad it's the second game. I'm glad that it's going to get, the spotlight of it all at night. And, I think people are going to take away from this one that this game was just sick. And this game was one for the ages, because I think last year it should have been that. And unfortunately we didn't get it. So
Yeah.
I'm grateful we're getting it this year.
Yeah. And I mean, we know this. I feel like the entire Philadelphia Union's back line was voted or nominated for Defender of the Year, and
Pretty much.
Andre Blake made the freaking list of MVP finalists, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And that's wild. Because he's a keeper, but B, we haven't talked yet about LA and Austin, but this league's obsession with for LAFC, this league's obsession with the shiny new toy is annoying to the point where I think that they get more favorability even from places like 538 to win when they don't necessarily deserve it. And so again, from the fan POV, I'll keep reiterating that it's interesting to watch the way that some of these teams who have talked big now approaching the conference finals on the West, and how they're acting when they don't yet have anything to back it up. And then you've got Philadelphia and New York, one of whom is the reigning MLS Cup champion, but the other who's just been a quietly dominant team all freaking season. I mean, again, DC United here, they scored 13 goals on us. Completely unanswered goals, and shut us out.
Yeah.
That is truly unheard of.
It's ridiculous.
And so insane. And then, of course, they've got freaking 20 and 21-year-olds scoring playoff goals.
Yeah.
And it's just the respect I know is there, but it's just not very loud. And so it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. And I really do hope, I hate to say this, I know, but New York got their year last year, by the way. I really hope Philly makes it, because I just want there to be a nice little bookend to the season, for us not to be arguing that, oh, Philly had a great 2021 and a great 2022.
Yeah.
To have them also be called champions is, I think, what they deserve for how consistent that they've been, which I think you can agree on the consistency part.
No, look, for sure. Philly, best team in the Eastern Conference. I was really upset at their end of season kind of slip up and allowing LAFC to get the supporter shield. I'll say LAFC won it. I think Philly allowed them to win it. I think Philly should have locked down their second supporter shield in club history, because they were that good this year. I have all respect for Philly, because they're run well. The front office is awesome. We talked about Jim Curtin. A lot of the guys on this team, they're either veterans who are just solid players, or they're young up and coming players. It's awesome. I do love the Philadelphia Union setup, and I have to give them full respect. If they make it to an MLS Cup final, if they make it, I might be rooting for them. We'll see. But I mean, obviously, at the end of the day, I have to root for my boys. I have to root for the reigning champs, because back to back would be also a pretty fun thing to accomplish in modern day Major League Soccer. The last thing that I just want to say about this matchup, and it is from an NYCFC point of view, is the injury to Maxime Chanot that we saw in the game against Montreal early when he left and we had to bring in Keaton Parks and shift up the formation a little bit. NYCFC has been on their positive run, playing that 3 men in the back and then allowing Kevin O'Toole and Gabby Pereira to be on the wings and be a little bit more offensive. If Maxime Chanot is not healthy, we have 0 center back depth, and we're going to have to switch up the formation to something that hasn't allowed us to win. Obviously, we beat Montreal, but I'm saying hasn't been a part of this long winning streak that we've had. So that's something I'm a little concerned about. We'll see about the health of Maxime, and just knock on wood that he's ready to go. Same for Ale Bedoya. I want to see him healthy and ready to go in this one. I want to see full strength lineups on both sides. Let's see some fun soccer. But let's steer away from the Eastern Conference. Let's go out west to two teams who think that they deserve it all, right? LAFC, the number 1 seeded LAFC will be hosting the number 2 seeded Austin FC again on October 30th. This one at 3 p.m. on ABC. This one does have the makings to be a very fun game because there is a lot of star power, right? At the end of the day, there are players you can target, you can look at and be like, that dude can just take this game over. And this game can be insane. An MVP candidate in Sebastian Joisi, Carlos Vela just being Carlos Vela. Maybe we see a Gareth Bale healthy. Chicho Arango has been on fire all season long for LAFC. And then on Austin's side, I mentioned Joisi, but Diego Fagundes, he's been absolutely insane.
Yes.
I think deserves a ton of credit this year. So when you think of this game, you got the number 1 seed Supporter Shield winning LAFC. You got Austin on the flip side. Where does your brain go to first?
As silly as it sounds, I know home field advantage is a thing, and we've seen a lot of the home teams this year, with few exceptions, be the ones that advance. I think LA is one of the more here, by the way, I went out and saw my very first game at the Bank of California on a Tuesday.
Okay.
And it was still incredibly intimidating. A. B, the fans freaking fought each other after the match was over.
Awesome.
So I was like, there's
Don't
something
do
going
that.
on here. If they're not even worried about their opponent, they're literally fighting each other on a Tuesday night. And so I assume alcohol was involved. So,
Probably.
So I think that the performance by LAFC as Supporter Shield winners has been impressive. And I think that they have maintained a certain level of play that, as good as Austin has become over this season, in their second season ever, still has not experienced. And that's, they've got their own MVP contender. They've got their own story built and the narrative that I think actually we haven't even talked about this, of course, this whole MLS analysts doubting them narrative, which I'm obsessed with, by the way. I hate it. I'll answer the question, and then I feel like we should talk about it for a second.
We will.
I think I want Austin to win because I think that they have just, I'm not entirely sure how to describe it without it sounding really silly. It's not that I don't think that LA doesn't deserve it. It's not that I think the story of Austin making it would be better, but there's just a movement and a tenacity that Austin has exhibited as of late. And the train, to me, is just moving fast enough that it would be so phenomenal for them to just absolutely steamroll LA, which they have already done. I think
they won 4-1.
Yeah. I want that to happen again. And I see that they have the capacity for it. They shut down Dallas pretty well. And I think that they could shut down LA the same way.
Yeah.
It just really, I don't know. It depends on which way the wind is blowing, I guess.
No, this one
Very generalized opinions and statements here, but,
This one has the making to be very good. Yes, Austin did beat LAFC 4-1 when Austin was at home. The game that was at Bank of California Stadium was a 2-1 win for Austin. Austin still winning, much closer one. So maybe the home field advantage for LAFC plays something here. But let's talk about Austin and the mentality, because I can agree with you that I think on the field, Austin has they've had that, right? The Matt Doyle, RSL, X-Dog mentality. I think that they've shown that all year long, and they're killers. Where LAFC, I don't think they show it at times when they have the capability, talent-wise, to do so. But owner of Austin FC, Anthony Precourt, he posted a photo on Twitter of him laminating the season prediction for Austin FC from all of the MLSsoccer.com and Extra Time experts. I'm just going to say I hate it. Like, at this point, like, it was funny, like, when they locked up the number 2 seed. It was funny going into the playoffs. Like, we get it. Like, everyone predicted you to be bad. You guys ended up being really good, and now you're in the Western Conference Final. I get it. It's a mentality thing. You want to motivate the guys, but
yeah.
At the end of the day, to me, it's like, you're a number 2 seed. Like, no one's overlooking you anymore. Like, you're going to play the number 1 seed that you've beaten twice this season. Like, just play your game. Like, if this is what you need to do, keep it in house. That's just my opinion. I've spoken to a few of those MLSsoccer.com Extra Time experts, and they said it was funny. Now it's kind of weird. So that's just where I'll leave it at for this. I know you have a different opinion.
No, I actually agree with you. I think the Precourt aspects is probably what's most annoying to me.
Yeah.
It's definitely like when a meme comes out or some social phenomenon happens and the internet grabs a hold of it, and then all of a sudden the corporations jump in and they're like, yeah, Adam Levine DMs, ha ha ha, LOL.
Exactly.
You're like, no, it's not funny anymore.
You ruined it.
Yeah, and he is the face of corporate greed.
Yeah.
Obviously, and I am certain your listeners and viewers know that story, but it feels like distant memory, and it feels like to me when I sit and think about it that Precourt was appropriately punished for his role in all of that when last year Austin had a really horrible season, but he really wasn't, and I don't think he ever will be, because Austin is still experiencing their streak of home sellout matches from last year into this year, and
enjoying life as owner of Austin. Yeah.
And honestly, like, separate him from everything else that's going on in that city. They are doing it right. Everything that is off the field is so phenomenal, and it is what we have come to expect from LAFC and pretty much no other team. They have a great community relationship. They incorporate local talent and voices and leaders and organizations into everything that they do. They're cool, which is something really freaking hard to do, and what I know a lot of teams are not in this league. And
McConaughey.
You what?
I said Matthew McConaughey. That's cool.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that is cool. Which is so freaking funny. But like they have their finger on the pulse of their community, and I'm so jealous of it. But I find it funny. We know our boy Felipe Martins. I can't remember if it's plural or singular. But Felipe, who played for the Red Bulls for a bit, came to DC, is now in Austin, and everyone really has a very strong opinion on him.
Yeah.
One thing that people do say is he's just like aggressive and violent on the field, but such a nice dude off the field. And I haven't seen much of that at Austin because he's not a regular starter, but the one mentality he has always had through his entire career is the underdog. Like, they never believed in us. The thing that everyone makes fun of Adrian Heath at Minnesota for. And that is the perfect mentality for Austin right now. And that behavior, it's silly and it's a little bit cringe, and you're at the point where you're at the conference finals and everyone is giving you the credit. They're no longer doubting you, to your point. So you're right. The very first video that they made where Josh Wolf, their coach, held up that like
Funny.
yeah,
Yeah.
funny
Like,
and like well done and tasteful and like they don't believe in us, we believe in ourselves, whatever.
yeah.
But yeah, now it's a little silly. But it also like I'll wrap it up with this. Regardless of how I feel, this may be controversial and it's gonna be housed on your podcast. So at the end of the day, like you're gonna bear the brunt for
It's
it.
all me. Yep.
There are a lot of coaches and a lot of players who do not take anything that the Matt Doyles of this league say seriously at all. And I think Major League Soccer is in a very interesting place where a lot of the loudest voices, journalists, analysts, league puppets, whatever,
Yeah.
are people who just you would not associate with the sport normally.
Mhm.
The armchair analyst moniker is a very good descriptor.
Yeah.
And so sometimes when I talk to the friends I have made and the people I've come in contact with across the league and they roll their eyes at some of the things that they say, I I realize that not everyone is paying as close attention to those rankings as Austin is. And so, like I tweeted, at the end of the day, I think that they should just be really grateful that there's a team that's taking their opinion seriously.
I mean, like, look, that's a fair point. Like when I tend to, and we're getting big topic conversation here again. When I get to like me taking in content, I love content from ex players. I love content from people who were on the field, who have done it, right? Like that's just the way I like to take. I like to take it in. So when I listen to Extra Time, and I do listen to Extra Time,
Same,
I
same.
love
Love it.
I love the opinions of Kalen Carr and Charlie Davies. I take those opinions maybe a little bit more serious because they know what
Yeah,
it's like on a 110-degree day in Houston or a rainy day in New England, right? Like they know what it takes to win in this league. They've both won awards in this league. So I listen to them a little bit more. But I will also say I think there is a time and a place and an okay opinion for an armchair analyst, for a Doyle, for a guy,
right,
a Weed.
right,
You just have to, and with anything in life, and I'm getting super big picture now. I think you have to listen to where information is coming from, filter that, and say, why is this information coming out the way it is, and just
mhm,
accept where like the source of the information and process it correctly. Because people
yeah,
don't do that. People are just like Matt Doyle said this guy sucks. Charlie Davies said this guy's good. Maybe they just have differing opinions, and they have different opinions because they have different life experiences. You
right.
pick which one you value more and go with it. Like that's just how I feel about the larger, I think, conversation around MLS pundits. I'll go with that word, pundits.
Pundits, yes. Now, I'm looking up a tweet and I'm hoping to find it. There was a oof. I had realized, of course, when Cincinnati was going to Philadelphia, that between Cincy's last game of the season, which was at DC, where they won 5-2, and then Philadelphia's collective 13-0, just destruction of
Yeah,
us, that there was quite a very small story to be made, just a note to be made on just how many goals had been scored on us by these two guys that had made it to postseason. And I don't know as if I can find it right away, but I do remember Charlie Bame, who is a
mhm,
DC-based reporter who is also on that list that
yes,
Austin shared, had added some extra context that just absolutely devastated me. And I bring this up because I think that the people who pundits who we may whose opinions we may value a little bit differently than others, they bring context. He mentioned a couple of things, so I'll have to look it up later.
yeah,
But DC, one of the ones that hit me the most was DC had traded a spot in the MLS draft with Philly, and the spot that they traded, Philly ended up using it to draft Andre Blake.
hmm
And then he listed two other things for guys who play for Philadelphia who um, are absolutely crushing for Philly right now that DC decided to say no to.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things where I was like, okay, I'm a fan of the game. There's so many people who have played the game. I've played in Division 3 soccer, not to brag, but I know as much as I know, but
Yeah.
those dudes, just by nature of having their mind in the and absolute weeds of it all day in and day out, have historical context that I really, really have come to appreciate. And so
Yeah.
they're just things that they know that I do not have space in my brain for. And for that reason, a lot of times I have to give them, to your point, I have to give them a lot of credit. So, but the rest of it, I mean, man, these Austin fans, they're gonna get what's coming to everybody. It's
Yeah.
happened to Atlanta. They were top of the world, top of the league, cup winners, and now their fandom is going
They're
through
where
a
they
bit
are.
of a patch.
Yeah.
And then again, DC United is holding on to what happened in the 90s and will probably do that for the next couple of years. So it
Yeah.
happens to everybody, but I do love how obsessive they are about it.
It's look, I'm again, it's great. It makes MLS what MLS is, and I think you have to appreciate it
Yeah,
for
yeah.
what it is. Um, Cheyenne, let's wrap things up. I am not going to force you to give predictions. If you want to do that on your own, that is completely fine. But I'm going to give predictions, and then we'll wrap things up. So, again, going to the larger conversation, I'm an NYCFC fan listening to the podcast. For the two
Hmm.
who value my opinion, maybe take where the information's coming from. I'm picking NYCFC to beat Philly. I'm going to go 3-2. I think it's going to be a high scoring game. I think NYCFC is going to allow some goals to the high scoring Philly offense. I just think NYCFC has been super creative, super fun to watch, and I think that will break down Philly a little bit. So I'm going 3-2 for them. And then in the West, I'm going LAFC over Austin purely for home field advantage. And I think it's going to be close as well. I don't know, 2-1, something like that. I can probably see 3-2 again. But Cheyenne, do you want to give predictions? It's okay if you don't.
I do, but I do want to preface this by saying I have rooted for a lot of teams who didn't make it this far.
Okay. Okay.
I wanted Montreal to make it
Yeah, I can
over
see
the
it.
weekend.
Yeah.
Sorry. I'm at the point now where just again, the fandom aspect of it makes me always root for the underdog. And for that reason, I am gonna pick Austin over LA, but I'm not gonna root for the underdog at Philly. I am gonna pick Philly over New York just because I think that they are um
They've been
they're
overlooked.
they're coming for some revenge for what they didn't get last year. But I do think that one of these games, if not both, will go to PKs.
Okay. I
Um,
I would love to see it. I mean, I
I
love
hate it.
it.
Okay, so wait, question before you go. Are you going to the game on Sunday?
I will not be going to the game, unfortunately. I have a
Yeah,
wedding to go to Sunday, so I will be watching
okay.
the game from a wedding. But
Can I tell you how annoying weddings are? I'm missing the NWSL final in DC this weekend because I'm going to a wedding, but I'm flying back early, early Sunday so that I can go to the game.
I love it. I mean, like, just like who has fall weddings? Like, stop it. Like,
Stop it. Also, just stop, like, getting married.
yeah. I mean, I can't say that I'm engaged, but
I guess do you have a date set?
yeah, April. So it's a spring wedding. It's not a fall
Okay.
wedding. Okay, I
Yeah,
missed
but still, this the
early.
soccer season,
I know. Well,
you
there's
gotta
MLS.
double check the schedule when it comes out in a couple weeks.
I know, right? But MLS, it never stops. So I mean, there's no perfect time to do it unless it's like January. But
Well, and I know Paul Arriola and his fiancée are getting married at some point in December,
okay,
which is, I after the World Cup, the assumption would be maybe that
after he wins the
Fiancé would
World
make a
Cup.
little bit of money.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I thank you so much for this, by the way. I
Oh, of
absolutely
course.
loved catching up with you. I realized so much of my analysis is so very generalized, and I'm always quite insecure that means I don't sound what I'm or don't it doesn't sound like I know what I'm talking about.
You know what I'm talking about.
But I also feel like thank you. I also feel like to make any sort of um, prediction about Major League Soccer is to just ask um, to be laughed at, you know? And to our point about Austin,
So yeah,
I
it's
mean,
so not. You can't predict MLS. It's gonna be someone's
right,
gonna trip, and apparently it's gonna be a red card on someone else, and that person's kicked out of the game, and it's a mess of a game. That's just what MLS does.
right. VAR is always going to fail.
Some cat's gonna
Again, the
run
way the
across
wind
the
is blowing is
field.
it's going to change something.
Yes, it's just
Um,
MLS, and predictions are stupid, I think, but I give them because
as
everyone
you
has to
should.
give them,
Yeah.
and that's what it is.
Well, the last thing I will say is Hani Mukhtar is an MVP level player,
Mhm.
but I am not really into bestowing MVP um, honors on players whose teams get kicked out of the playoffs in the way Nashville has both last year and this year. That's my opinion.
I think it's fair, and it's one that I agree with. It's just unfortunate that they have like Major League Soccer has come out and been like MVP is a regular season award, and I'm like, but if you
Okay.
like you shit the bed in the playoffs, you shit the bed in the playoffs, and like that's gonna give me like I think Druisi, if we're gonna count postseason, probably has now a better shot than Hani if for
1,000%. Yeah.
but votes
Um,
are counted already and blah, and it's annoying. I can agree
Here's
with that.
what'll have to happen, MVP or not. He'll just have to score like an absolute banger of a goal in the final,
Yeah.
and people will remember that.
He'll win MLS Cup MVP, and that's the one that matters, right?
Yeah, yeah. So, well, here's the other thing too,
Yeah.
and we can wrap up after this. I know everyone wants to know my like travel plans and my ideas here, but I really would like Austin to win because it means that the final would have to be in Philly.
That
And
would
for
be close.
me,
Yeah.
yeah, there's a difference there. I can drive
Mhm.
2 hours to Chester. I would have to really just maneuver my way around some Southwest flights and use some points to get out to LA, and I don't wanna do that, so
Yeah, I look, that's why I was kinda hoping Dallas somehow made MLS Cup and you
I
would
know.
them, and it would just be way easier for me, but it is
Yeah.
what it is. But Cheyenne, let's wrap things up. Where can the people listen to you, follow you, watch you? Because you got content coming out everywhere.
I do. So since we last spoke, I have made my way to TikTok as a creator, not just a consumer in the wee hours of the night. I started a podcast and have
Mhm.
come to you to both complain and ask for advice on how to get people to be interviewed. I've
Yep.
got an interview coming out with the I was about to say the late great Drew Moore. He's kind of late great. He did announce his retirement from MLS and had played for the Colorado Rapids for the past few seasons, but I've got that coming out shortly. Very excited for that. And that's on anywhere you can stream podcasts. And everything else is at Btwn Clean Sheets. I am also going to the World Cup for 3 weeks,
Really?
and I
That's
have tickets to 14 matches.
love that. That's awesome.
So, yeah, so please, I will be bringing a burner phone and probably a burner computer and a burner camera, so,
Turner everything.
just look for content, from there.
Got it. Well, please be safe. I will definitely say that.
Thank
Enjoy
you.
the World Cup.
Yeah,
Everyone watching, listening, make sure you check out Cheyenne. Go follow her on everything because the content's fun, the content's awesome, and I'm excited to hear that Drew Moore interview. Cheyenne, thank
good.
you for coming on. Thank you for chatting with me, and I hope we can chat again soon.
Great, thank you so much. Have a good day.